В Питере очень немного вузов.
Nature is a sacred scripture of God that is given to us. If you want to understand the Creator's intention and design, study His works. Therefore, we are very attentive to all issues, including the issues of sacred geography. In our opinion, any sacred object has two basic aspects: spatial-territorial, which is tied to the landscape and determined by physical and geographical factors, and the second is an integral part of the sociocultural processes taking place in this zone. Herewith, it performs a purely spiritual function. Sacredness is often perceived as holiness. However, the concept of sacredness reflects functional possibilities of an object, while holiness is its quality. The mystery of the sacred lies in the fact that it defies rational explanation. In my speech, I would like to touch upon the issues of not only technology of obtaining sacred knowledge, but also the methodology of their use, both for reason and for faith. In my opinion, today's joint research of this problem within the framework of both religious and scientific knowledge is of very important methodological significance for understanding the principle of their mutual complementarity. Sacred objects set a certain order, mode of action, thoughts, and behavior, which speaks in favor of the power of sacred objects over a person, even mountains or stones. This is directly noted in the Bible. Remember the words of Christ: "I tell you, if they keep quiet, the stones will cry out." At the same time, it is necessary to right away emphasize that the power of sacred objects in human society has a rigid conceptual certainty and works only within the framework of the accepted conception of governance. In the framework of the biblical conception of governance, sacred objects are one. In the framework of the Quranic, they are completely different. The development of life on the planet was accompanied by the formation of a specific field structure belonging to the body of the planet, the noosphere according to Vernadsky. It has a structure that is not homogeneous and is unique in different areas of land or water, exactly to the same degree that the geophysical, cultural phenomena and processes that occurred in these places are unique. In the field relation, the model of the planet's functioning has a direct analogy with the functioning of biofields accompanying the physiological, spiritual nervous functioning of the human organism. The field system, reflecting the specific intelligence of the Earth, can be perceived as the carrier of its psyche, the psyche of the planet. Moreover, the previousness of this psyche is reflected in the ancient classification of the planet as Mother Earth. Unfortunately, we do not treat Mother Earth in a human way, often not noticing her tears. And nonetheless, she educates us like a mother, punishes us and gives us gifts. And isn't it from here that there are two etymologically different types of gratitude characteristic of the Russian language? We can say spasibo, thank you, derived from the phrase God save you, and we can say blagodaryu, which also means thank you, I give blago. They seem to be synonyms, but they are completely different in meaning. Today, the term noosphere is used to refer to the field system of our planet. Vernadsky believed that it is formed precisely in the process of globalization. In our opinion, the noosphere existed before. Moreover, it contains the mystery and experience of previous antediluvian civilizations. There are special places on the planet where the field structures of the Earth and the field structures of a person interact so that a previous person lives in them more easily. If a person is malicious, then the same field structures oppress him. This is the essence of the technology of the impact of sacred places on the social system. They differ from the known geopathogenic zones, which negatively affect any person. It's just that different people have different degrees of protection, but they always have a negative effect. Being in sacred places, due to the specifics of the interaction between the energies of human biofields and the fields of the Earth, it is easier and energetically less costly for governance to exert a spiritual influence on the nature of processes taking place in society, in nature. If this technology works in the area of a specific object, then such places are called places of power. Places of power must be treated with great care. Otherwise, they lose their original qualities. For example, the characterization of Palestine as the Holy Land, if it was legitimate in ancient times, has long been lost as a consequence of the centuries-old inadequacy of the behavior of those living in this area and constantly violating God's commandments. The places of power of Russian civilization have a special mission rooted in antiquity. Often, our temples are located in the places of ancient pagan temples, which were located precisely in places of power and other sacred places. Today, the eyes of many world-class analysts are looking with hope precisely to the model of the new conception of human development, the conception of social safety, which our multinational Russian civilization can offer the world. Back in 1944, the American Edgar Cayce, a clairvoyant whose prophecies no one doubted, in one of his prophetic statements noted the following: "In Russia, there comes the hope of the world, not as that sometimes termed of the communistic, of the Bolshevistic, no, but freedom, freedom, that each man will live for his fellow man. The principle has been born. It will take years for it to be crystallized, but out of Russia comes again the hope of the world." In my opinion, these times are coming today. If we talk about the methodology of using sacred knowledge, about epistemology, then we proceed from the fact that the holistic knowledge of the processes of the universe presupposes obtaining information about it through two channels, through the channel of reason and through the channel of faith. At the same time, sacred places work as direct amplifiers of the possibility of receiving revelations, warnings about the future, information about the global history of mankind from the noosphere of the earth, which remembers everything. Information about the past in sacred places is read from the planet's noosphere directly into the human spirit. Although spiritually undeveloped and superstitious people deny this mysticism as a part of the reality around us that they have not personally known. Next, we will consider the methodology for using available facts, including those obtained using sacred opportunities. Any historical knowledge in society always bears the imprint of the conception within which it is investigated. Back in 1988, the journal Science and Life published an article entitled "How to Approach a Scientific Understanding of the History of Soviet Society" by Professor Butenko, Doctor of Philosophy. In this article he writes, "We are guided by one methodology. We study the facts and know the same, but we come to different conclusions. Why? In his opinion, this is due to the fact that in the study of history, along with methodology and facts, there is still a conception that connects together the main stages of the historical time under consideration. This conception is different for arguing authors, so the same facts appear every time in different lighting, with their own shades of meaning. But in our opinion, Butenko is deeply mistaken when he insists on the fundamental impossibility of knowing the world, since everyone has different conceptions. Where and how did these mutually exclusive conceptions originate, and which of the many possible conceptions is true? This is the main question of humanity today. The cognition methodology is designed to reveal and recognize not facts, but processes in their mutual internesting. If we study simply the facts and ignore the processes that encompass them, then we get what is happening today. We will get these fruitless television parliamentary debates in which the task of each of the participants is to manipulate the facts into a preformed position under a predefined conception. And any sacred information is only valuable if we competently correlate it with socio-political processes in their mutual internesting and understand them. The abundance of facts without understanding the processes that encompass them is expressed by methodologically illiterate people in a multitude of unreliable, incompatible opinions about the same objective process. During the years of perestroika, this was welcomed, was elevated to the level of the ideal of social life, and was called pluralism of opinions. In fact, pluralism of opinions is destructive in relation to society, since the overwhelming majority of opinions are absurd and are not an expression of the different facets of a common, multifaceted truth, and moreover, no one is looking for this truth, preferring to revel in their own views on what is happening. In this sense, in my opinion, the traditions of the Church should be recalled. And only if a sufficiently wide layer of conceptually literate people who possess process distinction develops in society, if they dobrosovisly carry out the mission of enlightenment, then society has a chance to switch to the effective use of sacred information. In the Russian tradition, this methodology is called sobornist. Sobornist, in which the free will of everyone does not defend his I, but without conflict complements the free will of all others in the mainstream of God's providence. This is, as it were, a methodology for finding ways to the future. Atheistic science, mistakenly denying the role of religion and faith, asks the traditional question, how can belief in the existence of God help in knowing the truth? But the fact is that if we turn to this genre of literature, which in the Orthodox tradition is called the Lives of the Saints, it turns out that for the saints, the question of the existence of God was a matter of knowledge, that is, they understood this every day. It was not even a matter of faith. The fact of the existence of God for each of them was daily confirmed by prayers and the course of life in accordance with their meaning. And only dialectical unity in the use of two channels, the channel of reason and the channel of faith, allows one to form a life-consistent worldview. Because through the channel of reason, you will never understand everything that is happening in the world during your lifetime. And only the combination of these two channels makes it possible to form a life-consistent worldview, to ensure further knowledge of the truth within the boundaries of the entire objective reality. However, taking something on faith has its own specifics. The consent to accept some information on faith, as well as the refusal to do so, are conditioned in the human psyche by his true, not ostentatious nraviousness. This means that objective vicious nraviousness allows us to accept erroneous, a priori false information on faith as true, and pravious nraviousness excludes the acceptance of lies and mistakes on faith as truth. Pushkin and Anatole France assert that chance and coincidences are a kind of sign of God. The amazing language of chance I can confirm from my own experience. Once I told my friend, an historian, a version about the possible stay of Jesus Christ between the ages of 13 to 30 with the Magi of ancient Russia in Old Ladoga and Valam. We know different versions. According to one version, Christ was in India, according to another in Egypt. But neither of the versions are completely reliable, and we can prove it firmly. This historian, having heard my detailed arguments, spent the whole evening thinking. Imagine his surprise when, after having pondered over this topic all evening, he woke up early in the morning, picked up a book from the bookshelf, without looking at the book that had accidentally turned up. Just as accidentally, he opened it, and in the first paragraph he came across, read what was written about the fact that Christ walked in Russian land, in the Russian villages. I asked him, "Where did you read that?" It turns out in the story Kalinin by Maxim Gorky. I immediately searched his name on the internet and read the same thing. Science could reckon with such facts only if something similar happens to everyone who follows the same algorithms of actions as my historian. Unfortunately, this is the basic fallacy of science. Such things are never repeated in history. God never demonstrates anything to anyone for show. This is the basic error of science, because it does not heed the ancient wisdom. For the deaf, they do not serve Mass twice. But religious knowledge also has its methodological problems. Historically established traditional confessions offer people contradictory, largely mutually exclusive views, both on theological issues and on economic, sociological issues, including the basic problems of life, the attitude towards alone interest, towards alcohol, towards distinguishing between God and God's messengers. As a result of these interfaith disagreements on the most important problems of the life of society, many, without going into their essence, deny the life consistency of faith and religion in principle, explaining their presence in the culture of mankind simply as ignorance, subjective delusions, and weakness and instability of the psyche. This is how atheism, godlessness, is generated. The motivation for their rejection of faith and religion is usually simple. Well, if the Almighty is the only one, then this pluralism, mutually denying each other's confessional canonical opinions, is not from God. If God really existed, then he would suppress all the existence of these discrepancies, all the atrocities that have been carried out on this basis throughout the entire memorable history: Huguenots, Catholics, Jesuits and Sunnis, Christians, Muslims. And since he does not do so, this must mean that he does not exist. This is the logic of atheists. This erroneous atheistic conclusion is based on a gross error, an unjustified attempt to entrust God with the mission of the supreme police officer and global inquisitor. This pluralism of opinions, which does not correspond to the objective reality, has at one time been generated by people themselves, and they themselves must get rid of it by methods of cognition and enlightenment. I would like to quote Mendeleev, who said that nature is the gospel of God. He noted this very accurately, because in order to understand God, God endowed us, first of all, with reason, distinction, and faith, and created nature for us, through which we can understand the design of the Creator. In conclusion, I would like to say that working for the last 11 years with nature at the Agrarian University, I consider it necessary to emphasize the special significance of the Russian Orthodox Church and the special mission in the religious sphere. It is she who, not only in deeds but also in name, bears the root basis associated with truth, praviousness, sovest. Perhaps it is she who could initiate the formation of such a platform for rapprochement on the basis of sovest and praviousness of representatives of all confessions of our society, the need for which, in the middle of the 19th century, was written by Saint Ignatiy Brianchaninov. Such a platform for ideological unity could be the idea of further development of theological science, consideration of the transition of religious views from faith in God, which the Church has successfully carried through the centuries, to faith to God, according to Sovest, to faith to God in life, which equally applies to representatives of any of the confessions. In our opinion, faith in God and faith to God are fundamentally different. One of my friends wrote this in verse: "The path of his providence is unknown, for there is faith in him, but to him faith is none." Or Anatole France wrote, "Chance is perhaps the pseudonym of God when he did not want to sign." Pushkin: "Providence is not algebra. The human mind, as the folk expression goes, is not a prophet but a conjecturer. It sees the general course of things, and can deduce from it profound suppositions, often justified by time. But it cannot foresee chance, that powerful and instantaneous instrument of providence." Or in the Quran, "God does not change the condition of a people until they change what is within themselves." A person who believes God, regardless of confessional affiliation, if he believes God, must be firmly convinced that if he lives according to his sovest, in a divine way, then God implements in relation to him the scheme of his guidance, protects him from bad accidents. With this understanding, a believer will be strict about organizing his life in a divine way, which means not harming himself, not harming the people around him, and creation as a whole. And in this case, such a vice as religious fanaticism will disappear, having fallen under the power of which, People are ready to teach their religion, their rituals, even God and not just other people, forcing by violence to accept their faith against service, which unfortunately today we observe in the world. In conclusion, let me express the hope that our proposal on technologies and methodology for the use of sacred information on scientific and theological issues, which does not claim to be indisputable, will nonetheless stimulate further research on this topic in the fields of both religious and scientific knowledge. Thank you for your attention.